Okay, no standout.
And you will, of course, have the slides if you want that, and we can also repeat this remotely. I do these through Zoom a lot. So should we dive right in? Are we?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm Ben Sandel. Thanks for having me here. I am a part of what was until today CBS Consulting Co-op. We are now Columinate, but we don't have to get into that now. But I work with a lot of co-ops all over the country on capital campaigns, on raising money from owners specifically. And it's a great thing. And that's what we're going to talk about here. The process, techniques, methods to hopefully make you all really great at it. And it is more than just, I mean, yes, there's a component that's important that's calling on the phone, but I think a lot of what we'll talk about here will be applicable in all kinds of ways that you might interact with people about the capital campaign. So helpful ways to talk to people about it, to answer certain questions, to kind of move it forward and help bring in the money. That's important. But before we get right into it, I want to do a brief little visualization exercise for you. So feel free to close your eyes if that helps you. But I want you to visualize a society that measures its success on the health of its people and of its environment, and visualize a society that has fair employment with reasonable wages and benefits for everybody at all levels of employment, and visualize a world where people who grow food, who grow crops, who work the land, are safe and not exposed to hazardous chemicals and are paid fairly. And imagine a community that thrives on a strong local economy that's varied and fun and meets the needs of the wide range of people within that community. And visualize a bigger food co-op in that community that is the cornerstone for all the rest of those things to happen. So I want you, that was the exercise, you're welcome to open your eyes. Of course, I'm a co-op person through and through, and so I'm a little biased, I will admit that, but co-ops are an amazing force in our world. And unfortunately, right now, it's a fairly small slice of our world, but that's why we grow our co-ops, is we know that, especially for our food co-ops, that most people in our community at least wish they could eat often multiple times a day. So they're getting food from somewhere. The more of them that get it from our co-op, the further we will go towards achieving that just, safe, healthy world that we'd like to see. So it's a fantastic thing that your co-op is doing so well, that it's growing, and that you're on the cusp of expansion so that you'll be able to hire more people, you'll be able to sell more products that were created in better fashion, you'll be able to serve more people and potentially a wider range of people in every sense of how that could be interpreted. So that's why we do these things. Why we grow, why we expand, and why it's a good thing that we do that. So I just want to sort of start there. So getting right into calling, there are certain goals that I'm going to put out there for you. And it's not, of course we want you to get the money, GTM. But, sorry, let me turn this off. But part of what's going to happen, and we spent the morning talking about ways to make people aware that the co-op is expanding and growing and doing a capital campaign, and there's going to be lots of ways we're going to approach people, lots of ways that they're going to have the ability to figure this out, and yet they still won't. So that's part of what we're doing is, you know, it's a noisy world. And I was the board president of my local food co-op in Harrisonburg, Virginia, from the first moment of development through getting the darn thing open. And about 6 months after this beautiful new co-op is open right downtown in a really prominent location, I ran into a business associate in town, not a close friend, but an acquaintance. And he said, hey, that co-op thing you were working on, Anything ever come of it? And so part of what we are always doing is we can't assume that people are aware that we're here, we're growing, and we're doing a capital campaign, so we have to keep informing people of that. We want to get people to engage with us. We want to build confidence in the co-op, in the expansion, and questions are a great way to do that. So it's really awesome if people want to ask you questions, whether you're calling them on the phone or whether you're just talking to them on the street. And any question is great. If they ask you, are you going to have more nut grinders in the news store? Awesome question, and we'll get to that. You, of course, want them to take the memorandum or the packet of information that they're required to receive before they can make their loan. So that's somewhat of a cover the co-op's rear end action, that you have to be able to show and document that everybody who made a loan received this. Now, you can't prove they read it, but you can be pretty sure they didn't read it if they didn't receive it. So taking the packet is an important piece of the process, and we'll get into some of the numbers, some of the ratios that come up through this process with lots of co-ops. So getting folks to take that packet is a very key step in them making a loan. And of course, if you can get them to make a loan, great. But we always want to show appreciation. In every contact we have, every email we send, every voicemail we leave, and every conversation, we want to truly appreciate folks for supporting our co-op, for being an owner of the co-op, for listening to us, for giving us our time. It makes a difference. People do appreciate being appreciated when it's genuine. So that's always a part of it. And as we talked about in a smaller group this morning, there is no one way that makes all of this work. So there's not a single method that is going to work for all of you, or even a single script that would work for everyone, but a lot of different methods together, a lot of different voices, and a lot of different modes of communication do work together to help get the point across. And all of those pieces of appreciation, of getting people to ask questions and hearing their questions, those are all part of building that strong sense of connection and appreciation for the co-op that will really help in getting people to put their money up for the co-op. Any thoughts about that so far? I'm used to doing these things remotely without people in front of me. So I have a tendency, I'm just looking at my screen and maybe seeing the chat box and I just get rolling. So, if I don't pause to ask you if you have questions, feel free to ask any question at any time. So the next piece I want to just acknowledge, we're co-op folks, and I love co-op folks. That's why I make my living in this world. But sometimes we have some interesting personal relationships with money. Sometimes not the most, sometimes people are involved with co-ops because they believe there should be an alternate way for us to deal with with money, with commerce, and I agree with that completely. But we also have to recognize that through this process we're going to be talking a lot about money, and we have to be comfortable with that. And I would add, too, that it's okay if we get done here today and you decide, you know what, this is not for me. Great. That self-awareness is really excellent, because it's not for everybody, and that's totally okay. Some people are really into it, really love this, get it, and love talking to people about it. But if that's not you, no problem. There's plenty of other things you can do to help the campaign. But money is a thing. I have issues with it, you have issues with it, everyone you talk to will have issues with it. My grandmother used to say, whether you're rich or poor, it's nice to have money. And she's right. And we're asking for people to part with it or to put it into something that they weren't necessarily planning on. So that's where I bring in Louise May Alcott, who notes that when well used, money is a noble thing, and we are giving people an amazing and wonderful noble use for their hard-earned, or maybe not, but for their dough, for their money. So putting that out there, we all got something around money, and that's totally okay. Let's just embrace it. But here's some of the reasons why it's really great for the co-op to go out to owners to ask for this money. I mean, it is definitely less expensive money. So that what it costs the co-op in terms of the management of all these loans, but more specifically the interest rate, is usually well below what a commercial lender would charge the co-op. And in fact, what kind of makes these work so well is we can pay better than a certificate of deposit or a money market account would for a similar term and amount of money, and yet it costs the co-op less. So we're giving owners a little more value and we're saving money for the co-op. These are also incredibly friendly loans if we need to renegotiate later, if we need to ask for additional terms, if we need to ask for deferred interest. Co-op owners are really amazing, wonderful people, and for the most part, they just want us to succeed, and they want the co-op to be there long-term to serve their needs. They're willing to help us out if we need it. And these are not secured. So that means there is risk, but it also means that a bank or credit union or a loan fund or another lender is going to be in that first position. So they're going to get the security or the collateral that the co-op may have. Not these loans, but it's good these don't, because if we did offer all of these folks collateral, then we wouldn't have that collateral to be able to borrow that other money that's essential to the project. So these are unsecured and subordinate to those first position vehicles. So that's part of why co-ops do it and why they're so great for co-ops. It is also who we are. You know, the cooperative definition includes associations of people united to meet their needs within a business enterprise. And this really brings both together super well. It also brings the concept of entrepreneurship into the ownership. That, you know, you are still a really nice young business. And like any new business, any growing business, there's risk, there's entrepreneurship, there's growth, there's excitement, and that's for everybody. We're all owners of our co-ops, real, true, genuine, equitable owners of our co-ops. So these activities are another way to talk about what a co-op is about and what its value is to our owners, and to spread some of that risk around a lot of people. You know, if you all were an LLC that owned the co-op with nobody else, and you wanted to expand and I was a banker, I would absolutely say, well, you're the partners that own it. What are you all putting in? You know, are you going to put in your own wealth to make this happen so that I can go to my bank and say, yep, the owners have put in adequate capital on their own? Well, we're just doing that on a much larger scale, on a more equitable scale. Instead of a few people owning it and also receiving all the benefits of it or all the return from it, we're spreading that out to anyone who's an owner of the co-op. It's absolutely one of our co-op principles. Member economic participation. Usually or traditionally that's thought of as, well, I paid money to join the co-op, to become an owner of the co-op, and in profitable years I get a patronage dividend or rebate, and maybe I get, you know, maybe you have owner appreciation days where you get a discount, other owner-specific benefits. That's usually how most people see it. But going back to 1844 with the Rochdale Pioneers, putting up some of our own money in order to help finance the co-op is also a key part of member economic participation. So we're just being true to our roots. We're just being a real co-op of asking our owners. And it is indeed a true value we can offer people. You know, again, sometimes co-op folks are not themselves, that is, co-op staff and board and management are not always people of great means themselves, sometimes by choice. And yet people who do have money to do something with are often really hungry for something great to do with their money. There's plenty of things you can invest your money into that, if you really dig into what's going on with your money, what's going on in the factories that are being financed with your money, what kind of countries they're going into and how those countries treat their people, you're not going to feel very good about it. You can feel great about loaning money to your co-op. It is a truly responsible investment that is a wonderful opportunity you can offer to the owners because they are owners of your co-op. So it's a real benefit of ownership that they're not going to get elsewhere. And it's also going to help you out. I mean, we all are in competitive markets, some more than others, but I saw the Walmart just on the edge of town, and if you don't think Walmart is your competitor, you need to think again, because they put a lot of food and even a fair amount of organic stuff into every marketplace that they're in. This is really something special that differentiates us from our competition. They can't offer this type of investment, and they certainly can't talk about how local it is, how real in benefit it is to the people of your community. It does help build connection and loyalty. People who have some money in the co-op are somewhat more likely to shop there. The data is interesting on that. There are often people who take part in co-op capital campaigns, who especially with startups, with new co-ops, who never shop at the co-op. Because the co-op appeals to their values and they want it to exist in their community, but for whatever reason, they have other values that clash, like they're super cheap. So we see this often with some older co-op owners who may be retired and they have savings, but they're on a fixed income. They'll loan money to the co-op because they see the value of it in their community, but they'll drive across town to save 5 cents on something at Walmart because they got the time. Whatever. People are people. But it definitely is a great thing. It strengthens the connection, the bond people have with their co-op. And you know, in this interesting time that we live in, I think anything that moves money out of the traditional Wall Street-based systems and organizations and into our co-ops, true local businesses that hire local people, and in the case of your new expansion, local craftspeople and carpenters and mechanics and plumbers and electricians, it's a really good thing to do. And I think that's something you can really talk about, that, you know, a lot of those of us who are inside the co-ops, all of you and me, we may think about this all the time, or it might be second nature to us, but for a lot of people, it doesn't even occur to them. You know, they joined the co-op because it was a cool thing to do. They don't really know what a co-op is. They like the food, they like the people. This gives us the opportunity to really talk about how special and important co-ops are, and I think this is a really important piece of it at the moment. Maybe it always is, but I don't know, at this time in the world, it just seems like, yeah, the Wall Street to Main Street stuff. And another really interesting aspect of these campaigns is there's going to be money coming from a lot of different people in your community. And we were talking this morning about approaching high net worth individuals, the known wealthy in your community, and a lot of them are going to say no. Partly because the known wealthy, they're known because their name's out there and everybody asks them. And if they're known, often it's because they like the recognition. So they're going for where they can have their name on the building and where they can get the maximum tax benefit, neither of which we're going to offer them, generally. But there are definitely enough people in your community to support. We were talking, because of some of the things that are going on with your overall financial plan, I don't think the final number's yet, but we were talking about $2 million. And you can raise $2 million from the people in your community. And that's not that I know your community that well, but I've seen communities of all different size and type and prosperity levels where, you know, if you have churches, if you have charities, if you have other places of worship, or anything at all that's supported by people putting money into what they value and what they care about, then there's also money there for our co-op. So the money is there, and it's going to come from a lot of interesting sources, and hopefully it's also going to come from all of you. And you know, I worked for a long time in the bicycle industry, and a really great guy who has since passed away, but he was part of Kryptonite Lock, the one lock that's in the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art. And he used to say, you know, you can't spell enthusiasm without IASM. I am sold myself. The great New Yorker, loud guy. But his point was really right, that if you can't find, even if you might not have the financial ability to loan yourself, which I hope you will all do whatever you can to loan as much as you can, you need to find a way to be sold on this concept, that this is an important thing for your co-op to do, to grow and expand, and it's really important for the owners to help support that expansion. Because it's really hard to get anybody else to loan money if you all haven't loaned money. And we like to see that the core group, by which we mean board, management, staff, possibly previous board members, or in your case might be folks who are on the founding team who are still in the community, we would like to see those folks, the total from that group, be about 10 to 15% of the overall goal of the campaign. You might not make it, but let's shoot for it, because it can be a really great and powerful thing. And definitely people will say, so you're on the board, you're calling me about this, you loaned yet? And I would, you know, because some people don't have the ability, and that's totally okay. It's unlike sometimes nonprofit boards, which are sometimes stocked with high net worth individuals for the sake of building up their, you know, capital campaigns. Co-ops aren't like that. So you want to be able to say, you know, as a group, we, the board, staff, and general, and the management, yeah, we have invested. We've invested a total of whatever that number might be. That way it gets you off the hook, but it's perfectly okay to say, yes, I have, and overall, our core team, our leadership, has also loaned a total of this much. That really helps people feel better about putting their own money into it. So the way I like to put it to people is, if you were thinking of maybe trading in your car this year, or maybe redoing the kitchen, I'm going to ask you to not do that, because that money needs to go to your co-op. And it's that important. Put those things off a year, keep driving that old jalopy. The co-op needs the money. So it's that important. And it's that great. So you're going to have some awesome surprises, and you're going to have some huge disappointments through this process. It's just how they work. People who you know love the co-op and have the money are going to say no, and other people are going to come out of the woodwork who you had no idea. And it happens in almost every campaign. Somebody shows up and says, you know, they will get out of a dusty pickup truck and come into the store and talk to somebody about the capital campaign and say, I wish I could do more, but I can only loan $100,000. It happens. It's awesome. So, but you've got to kind of get used to that concept of accepting that there are going to be disappointments and embracing the amazing surprises. It happens, and it's wonderful, and it's just part of the process. We can't really, it just is part of what happens. So as you make these calls, and really, especially as board members, when you talk to people, they, we used to, in our board trainings, we used to talk about you wear a board hat, and there are times when you take your board hat off, except that the reality of it is, I think of it more as that you wear like sort of a sheriff's star, and when you take it off and say, I'm not here as a board member, there's still that faded section of your shirt that people can tell it was there, and they know. And so in a way, you are always a board member of the co-op, even when you're not officially acting on behalf of the board or officially representing the board, but people know you are. So you got to be a good ambassador of the co-op. You've got to be positive, you've got to be honest, but also upbeat about it. And if you personally have any concerns about the project or the capital campaign or the financing, talk about it together as a group. Work through it so that you can feel really good about this. Because people are going to look to you to take their cue as to how they should feel about it. And again, as I said, these are a benefit of ownership. It's a great thing you can offer people who join the co-op, who are owners of the co-op. And we are not doing telemarketing here. We are owners of the co-op talking to other owners of the co-op. And we want to try to get comfortable and good at it, but we are not reading off a script. We are talking to people having what we hope are going to be good, meaningful, fun conversations. And groups that do really well in their capital campaigns, the callers have lots of really great, fun, wonderful conversations of all kinds, about all different things, but that eventually get around to, yeah, sure, okay, what do I need to do to loan money to your co-op? So now let's get into some of the numbers that come up a lot in these campaigns. These numbers are gleaned from a lot of different campaigns that have been done over about the last 20 years or so. So the calling is so critical, even though it's gotten much harder. You know, when we did ours in my home co-op, our capital campaign in like 2008, an awful lot of people still had like phones attached to the wall of their house with wires. Nobody has that anymore. So that makes it harder, and yet we are still seeing the same ratio that of people you can actually have a conversation, whether it's that they answer the phone and you talk to them, or you are able to have a conversation at an event or in your home or wherever you find this person. If you can talk to them about the capital campaign, about 25% of those folks are going to end up making a loan. So that's pretty powerful. More people you talk to, every fourth one has the potential for another loan. And as you get those packets, the packets of the memorandum, the legal information that includes risks and financial information that people have to take in order for the co-op to be protected when they make their loan, a quarter to a half of those people will end up making loans. So I used 3,000 owners as an example number. If you can actually eventually speak to, whether on the phone or in person, about 800 of them, maybe get 500 packets into their hands, get around 215 loans at a $7,000 average, that gets you to $1.5 million. And $7,000 average is pretty modest. There are co-ops that do much do much better than that. Certainly, just down the road from you, River Valley Co-op down in Northampton, Massachusetts, they're approaching $5 million in their current capital campaign. And I don't actually know what their average is, but I think their average is $15,000, $20,000, something like that. I see a lot. That's unusual. They're an outlier and they're doing great, and you can beat them. But I do see a lot of co-ops that have $10,000 and $12,000 averages, and we'll talk about how to achieve that. But this gives you an idea of how the numbers really work and why these actions to connect with people are so important. Any thoughts or questions or fears or anything so far?
I'm curious of what percentage of our current owners invested the last time?
Great question.
I don't know the number exactly off the top of my head, but I want to say earlier last year we had about 100 or so rollover loans. So those are folks that had invested in the past, but we're paying those off, so it might be lower now. And I don't know the total number of investments in the first campaign.
It was around like 200 or so, but I don't know how many members we had at that time.
And
if we got about 3,200 members now, it'd be a little under 10%. So looking back at that time, we had around 2,000 members, looking at about 10%.
Well, I was interested in the investors in comparison with the current membership, because that means 80–90% of them have done this before. So I would think that would make a difference in it's really different than when you did the first campaign and then very quickly did the second one, the smaller. So we're going to be talking to a lot of people who don't have a clue, may not even know that there's
totally that this is a thing that they can do. Yes, yeah. And
so
it is
a lot of education.
Yeah, and we are beginning to see, and of course one of the challenges in the co-op world is our data sets are small. So sometimes it's hard to draw conclusions based on small data sets. And yet we are beginning to see a number of recently opened co-ops like yours, like Just Food in Northfield, Minnesota, like my own in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which opened in 2011, who are now all expanding and are doing another round of capital campaigns. So we're beginning to observe that and see, okay, what are we seeing? What are, compare and contrast. And one of the things we're seeing is that these campaigns tend to be a little harder, but that's partly because the folks who were willing to join when it was just a dream with nothing on the ground, those were pretty darn committed folks, pretty wonderful, amazing people. And you do have more owners now, which is great, but some of those owners are more of like, is this Costco? They don't really understand what they joined, but that's fine. We'll help them understand and educate. So the proportion of loans to the total number of ownership tends to be a little lower in this campaign than it was in the earlier one. But again, we can work with that.
How frequently do campaigns get help from previous investors in joining with
some will almost always, either in the form of rollovers or new loans.
Well, and I was thinking volunteering to help explain.
Oh, yeah, some, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes those folks will definitely want to help. Especially if they,
so that's part of the plan. We're gonna ask them to help.
You might. There's certainly going to be opportunities for people to help in a variety of ways. We also see some sort of a natural limit between 200 and 300 loans for a campaign. Over 300 loans, at least what we have seen, is that in the amount of time that you can sustain this level of interest and energy, it's hard to get more loans than that in that time. That's a lot of paperwork. That's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of activity and stuff. So that's why I like to really watch closely what is a co-op's average as their campaign gets going and progresses, and what do we need to do from a strategy perspective to make sure that it's not going to take 500 loans in order for them to hit their number, because very few co-ops seem to achieve more than about 300, and that between 200 and 300 is really the sweet spot. A lot of successful co-op capital campaigns happen with that number of loans. And again, I think it's just a fatigue issue, and we can't run these forever. In fact, it's better to have these be short, fun, interesting, to grab people's attention and build momentum. They need to be a fairly compact time period. Doing this over 6 months of slow, I call it the California Casual campaign. One co-op has done it successfully in Southern California, but I have not seen anyone outside of, and also in an incredibly wealthy part of California.
Was that deliberate, or did they?
No, it wasn't deliberate at all. It was just how it happened. And this was a co-op that I went to do a thing like this with them in person, and some of the chatter I heard amongst the board as we were all settling in was, Martin Sheen backed into me in the co-op parking lot the other day. It's like, that's the kind of ownership they were drawing loans from. So, pretty unusual. But generally, we want these to be a fairly short period of time with a lot of fun and excitement and build momentum, and 200 to 300 loans is about where we're going to end up with that. And that's fine, we can do it. So, my obligatory picture of a happy puppy. Co-op people are often very empathetic. That's great. We care about the world, we care about the environment, we care about people. Really excellent. But that also means that sometimes co-op people are quick to say no for someone else. So you're looking at a list of people you're going to call, and you're like, oh, that person, I know that they've had some misfortune in their life. They just put a lot of money into veterinary bills, or something bad has happened. No, I'm not going to call them. I don't want to, I'm going to say, don't worry about it. Anyone who is not able to loan to the co-op, they will have no problem saying no to you. But what you don't know is, yes, they may have just had some great misfortune in their life. They may also have a trust fund. They may also find at a bad time in their life that putting money into something they love and appreciate, like the co-op, is going to make them feel really good. So stay positive and focus on all the reasons why people do put money into co-ops. Don't worry about any reason why somebody might not. They'll take care of that for you.
And you definitely won't get a loan if you don't ask.
Absolutely, absolutely. So don't talk yourself out of it before you even talk to them. And again, I say that from experience, working with a lot of groups for a while now. You know, again, people will make sure to protect their own financial health. Nobody is going to go broke because they loan too much to the co-op. So you just try to encourage them to loan as much as they possibly can, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and don't worry about why they might not. So stay positive. The puppy is to make you smile and be positive. Of course, I think that's the main reason people do support co-ops is because of the shared values. And there's a lot of different values. It's not necessarily the same value for anybody who does loan money to the co-op. It could be that they are, you know, they grew up in an area where, especially if they grew up in a farm family, where co-ops were essential to them. They may have gotten their electricity through their co-op. They may have gotten their water through a water co-op, and that's what appeals to their values. It might be the concept of the benefit is based on your use, not your investment. So unlike big corporations where you can invest $1 zillion, and if you have more stock than the next person, you have more say and you get more return. Well, in co-ops, we're not like that. We're equitable. Everybody gets one vote regardless of how much money you loan to the co-op. And your return tends to be how much you use it. The more you use it, the more you get back. So that might be the values. It might be that they know somebody who works there and they like it, or they used to work there and they feel a connection to it that way. They may have just gotten an inheritance and they want to put that money into it. I have heard from more than one, I've heard a number of times from co-ops that are doing it, that someone comes in and says, I have a lot of money and the way this money came into my family is not good. And I want to do something good with this money. So, in one case it was a farm widow whose husband played the market and invested wisely, but she didn't believe in the stock market and thought this was ill-gotten gains and didn't work with her values, so she wanted to loan a substantial amount to the co-op. Great. We can cleanse your money in that regard. But values are a big, huge thing. But again, people also loan money to co-ops because they know somebody who works there who they really, really love and appreciate. Or they used to be a part of a co-op in another place they lived and they just love it that much. Or they have had a recent influx of cash. Perhaps they, it could be an inheritance. It could also be just a CD came due. Who knows what? There's lots of reasons why people do it. You can trust in that. The main reason people want to help, they really do, but they don't particularly want to help paint walls or swing hammers, and that's really good because we don't want them to. We want to hire professionals to do that stuff. And believe me, co-ops have tried it. It works better when you hire professionals to do that stuff. But they want to help. They want to feel like they're part of the process. And their money can help. And the number one reason is because somebody asks them to do it. And asks them directly and honestly. Doesn't maybe hope that they'll do it or imply that it would be great if they would do it, but just asks them directly. James, would you loan money to the co-op, please? Just ask them that. It's an okay thing to ask, even though it's not always easy. We don't often ask people directly or ask them to do something we want them to do with their money. But yet, it's okay to do that, and many people will actually respect it. I have had people who have watched me or listened to me hem and haw and said, I'm waiting. I got my checkbook right here, but if you don't ask, I'm not doing it. It's like, okay, will you invest in this co-op today? Yes, I will. It's like, people, you got to ask them. Asking is powerful. And it's the number one, if you go talk to a nonprofit fundraiser, the number one people put money into things that are important to them is because someone asks them to do it. It's not just out of the goodness of their heart. It's not just because they believe in the mission of it. It's because somebody, in addition to that, somebody reached out and said, hey, would you do this for us, please? Would you put your money in? So there are better times to call. And I mentioned that I had looked at the results of a study that Harvard Business School did on perseverance and persistence. And they found that Thursdays are the day that more complex sales are closed. And by that they meant sales that usually take multiple touches and are more than just here's a product, you want to buy the product, but relate to, having conversations, coming together, figuring out how to make this work, and then getting folks to say yes. Thursdays were the day. Don't know exactly why. But generally, we find weekday evenings are really great. 6 to 9 p.m. is a great time. There's a reason why your alumni association calls you at that time, because it does work. Monday through Thursday. Friday evenings, not so much. Saturday afternoons and Sunday afternoons are also pretty decent times. Sunday evenings can be really good times too. Some of this varies by community. If your community has a lot of early risers and early settlers, perhaps you do 5:30 to 8:30. On the other hand, if your community thinks dinner hour starts at 7:30, maybe you could do 6:30 to 10. Whatever works, but keep in mind that those are key times, the weekday evenings. Lunch times can be okay. Especially often these campaigns are either in spring or fall, and you're calling people's cell phones. If somebody's sitting outside on a beautiful day enjoying their lunch and you happen to catch them, that could be a great time to talk to them about loaning money to the co-op. But I'm going to encourage you to always plan on at least an hour. And I say that because, for one thing, by the time I got my phone charged, I got my computer here, I got my list of names, I am ready to start doing this. Like, by the time all that's together, you're already 5 or 10 minutes in. Then you make your first couple of calls and you're sort of clunky and not quite feeling comfortable yet. And then my time's up, I'm done. So you haven't really done any real effective calling. Whereas if you tell yourself, I'm going to, give yourself a goal. I'm going to spend at least an hour, maybe 2 hours. Or I'm going to make 30 dials and hopefully talk to 4 people. Or I'm going to generate this many dollars. Whatever motivates you, but give yourself some time to do it. The second call always is better than the first, and the third is better than the second. You just get comfortable with it. You get in the groove. And especially when you get that person who says, oh yeah, I did get the letter. I think I will. Can you tell me this? Can you answer this question for me? Sure, okay, I'll make a loan. Then, heck yes, keep calling. Once somebody says yes to you, leverage that, because you can call the next person and say, so I just had a great conversation with another co-op owner and they loaned to the co-op. So I'm just trying to keep on that high. How about you? Are you ready to loan to the co-op? Would you please do that today? Anyways, give yourself some time. It's not something that can be done in 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. It really does take a little time to set aside for it. If it turns out that something cuts it short, calling is better than not calling, but do try to give yourself time to do it. Whatever you need to do to be ready to make your calls, whether it's some deep breathing, or having a cup of tea, or lozenges, or anything that just makes you feel good and focused and ready, go for it. Why not? You want to be in a good mood. You want to project out through the phone, or if you're talking to somebody in person, directly, that you are in a good place, you're happy, and you want to kind of invite them into your good place for this. So get yourself ready for your calls. There are, and I may be guilty about this, you are doing a loan campaign. So you are asking people to loan money to the co-op. I certainly see these loans as investments in the co-op, but investments are the term that we specifically use for capital campaigns that are using preferred shares rather than loans. It's a different vehicle. But the main thing I want to stress is we're not asking for donations or gifts here. We're asking for loans. And if you do mention donations or gifts, people start thinking tax benefit that we don't offer. So we don't want to mislead anyone that way. We don't want to make them think they're going to get a tax benefit that doesn't occur here. So make sure to use the language of loans when you talk to people. And definitely emphasize positive. Smile as you talk and think about when somebody asks you a question or comes up with something. I mean, we never know what's going on the other side of the phone. They might have had a bad day. They might have gotten into a fender bender on their way home from work. They might have gotten some bad news in the mail. We don't know. So we don't take it personally, but we also look at how we can bring some positivity back to them. And even if somebody asks you a tough question, like, oh, I heard, I don't know, I heard a co-op somewhere went out of business. What about that? You know, that's a pretty negative thing to say, and yet, you know, people sometimes are that way. Well, you could say, yeah, you know, like any business, some co-ops fail. But actually, co-ops have a much better success rate than conventional retail, like 70 to 80% rather than 50%. And we've already survived more than 5 years, so we are already past that most dangerous area. So, you know, how can you be truthful and yet positive? So think about that. If you do get into a conversation that's super negative, I personally prefer, I don't thrive on that stuff. Like, I can tell this isn't a great time to talk. Click, hang up, move on. But think about the positives, and smiling definitely helps when you talk. People do feel that through the phone. You're going to leave a lot of voicemails. And we're going to have talking points for you. You might think of it as a script, but really I think of it more as just a way for you to remember the points to cover that you can then practice and put in your own words, so that it is real and coming directly from you. So, you know, you're going to do a lot of, especially when you, for the first time you call somebody, you're going to say, hey, this is Ben calling from Monadnock Food Co-op and calling about our capital campaign, which is we need our owners to loan money to help support our expansion. The expansion is going to be great. And we've got lots of information on it, including in the store. We have floor plans. You can really look at it. But we need to talk to you about this. If you could either call me back at this number or email or come in the store, that would be really great. Thank you so much for being an owner of the co-op, and I hope to talk to you soon. So that might be your first email. Kind of long, but that's just the first one. You're going to call that person, unless that person calls you right back and says, yes, yes, I want to do it, which is pretty unlikely. You're going to call them again. The second time you call them, you're going to leave a really short voicemail. It says, you know, I called you last week, or whenever it was. Just following back up, calling from the co-op. Want to make sure that you know about this capital campaign and that you get to take part in it. Sit, short and sweet. You're going to keep calling, and you're not going to leave voicemails. But they're going to see this number come up, and they're going to be, oh yeah, that's the person from the co-op. Yeah, I got to think about that. That's okay. You want to create a sort of a sense of obligation there. And then towards the end of the period for the campaign, whether it's we're getting close to the goal or we're getting to the end of the time we've stated we're going to be working on this, you'll leave one final one where you say, hey, we are almost to the end of the campaign. We still need help. We still need more owners to loan. You could be the one who makes the loan that gets us to our goal. So please respond. And again, that's your last one. You can practice these so that you get comfortable with it. You can do them and again feel real about it because they are real. So you're going to do practice with that. At the beginning of any call that you talk to somebody, identify yourself right up front. It helps differentiate us from robocalls, but you are just another owner of the co-op. Hi, this is Ben. I'm also an owner of Monadnock Food Co-op, and I want to talk to you about the co-op. So identify yourself first thing. Ask if this is an okay time to talk. That's always a great question. It's wonderful to ask people questions, even questions they can say no to. If they say, no, this is really a bad time, totally understand. What's a better time? Can I call you tomorrow at noon? What works for you? Try to get a time from them. If they say, yeah, a typical answer is, yeah, I don't have much time, but I've got a little bit. Great. I can do this really fast. We're doing this capital campaign. It's funding this expansion. Expansion's going to be great. I've got a packet of information that gives you a lot of details. Can I get that packet to you? That's, if they say, okay, sure, get me the packet. Yes, that's excellent. Confirm their address. So one of the things we find, less so with young co-ops, but it's a big deal with long established co-ops is that nobody's contact info is right. Nobody's address is right. Everybody's moved 3 times since they joined the co-op 35 years ago, or moved 10 times. So ask, it's both a nice, polite thing to do, but just, I've got you at 123 Elm Street in Keene. Is that still a good address for you? Yes, it is, or no, it's not. And if it isn't, make sure to get that information back to the co-op so the co-op can update its database. And then if they've said, yeah, sure, I'll take a look at the packet, and you're having a really good conversation, you want to reset the way they're thinking. It's wired into us as humans that if we're given a cheap option, we take it. Even, we just take it. And we have to do something to reset that for people. So if they say, well, what's the minimum I could loan? Well, the minimum is only $1,000. But for us to hit our goal of $2 million, or whatever the ultimate goal might be, we're going to need some owners to loan $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, or even more. Or if you want to, feel free to say $10,000, $25,000, $50,000, or even more. But when you actually state those dollar amounts to people, all of a sudden $1,000 feels pretty puny. And you just have to trust me on this. There are an awful lot of people who could make $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, or $100,000 loans who, if they're not asked to, will make a $1,000 loan. So that's why we want to really put this out there. It makes a difference. I talked to a group, I'm working with them on the second phase of their capital campaign. In their first phase, they averaged $5,000. I said, great, so how did you present your ask? And they said, well, we're trying to achieve an average of $5,000. So, and they got a lot of $5,000 loans. Not bad, but what if they'd said we're trying to achieve an average of $10,000 or $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, and even more? They would have had a higher average. And indeed, in this phase, they're using this language, and their average has gone up quite nicely. So we really want to try to reset in people's minds that post they have that says cheapest, cheapest, cheapest. Could you be one of our $50,000 or $100,000 owners? Would you be able to make a loan at that amount? And it's totally great if they say, no way! But you're right, I could probably do 5. That's a huge win. And every once in a while you'll have somebody who will say, let me get back to you, let me talk to my financial advisor or my spouse or my spiritual advisor or my dog, and I might be able to do $50,000. It's great. That's how it works. Whether you're calling or not, it's great to be up on whatever is the latest information. So we're going to also be emailing the owners quite often, more often than you might be comfortable with, to give them updates on the campaign, but it's really wonderful and fun if you can say, yeah, you probably got an email yesterday saying that the campaign's at 50%, but actually I got an email this morning that was just internal. We're already up to 58%. This is awesome. So if you could help us get to 60%, that's great. It's like getting inside info. People like that. And it's fun, and it's something you can talk about. So be up on the latest information. Matches are also a great thing. So just like NPR, we will have people who will say, all right, I will loan $50,000 if you can get other people to loan a total of $50,000. Then I'll come up with it. That's great because it's an awesome thing to call people and say, even on voicemails, we have a matching effect right now. So if you can loan $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000, it'll actually be 20 or 40 or whatever, it's the double of the other amount, to the co-op. So it's really great, really powerful. It gets people off the fence. And people do that a lot. And I encourage you that if somebody says, yeah, I could do $50,000 or $100,000, to ask them, is it okay if we say that this is a matching loan? Usually they don't care at all. We just had this with the group in Frederick, Maryland. Somebody committed to $100,000. The coordinator was like, do you think she really means that, or did she put too many zeros on it? Well, here's how we're going to test that. You're going to email her back and say, would you be comfortable if we use this as two $50,000 matching loans? She emailed her back. The person emailed right back saying, I don't care how you message it as long as I get to write my check for $100,000. So it's like, okay. And indeed, those matches were both hit successfully and exceeded. Usually you exceed the matches. So that one person put up $100,000 of her own money, and then other owners came through with like $170,000 more dollars based on that match. Really wonderful and powerful.
Why two $50,000?
Just because we want a goal that is ambitious but totally achievable and in a fairly short time frame. So rather than say we're going to take a week to try to hit 100 grand, it's like let's take 3 days and hit 50 grand. And they hit the 50 grand in like a day and a half. And so then we still had another 50 grand to go. It just made it a more achievable chunk, was all. Nicer sounding chunk. You're going to have lots of information at your fingertips. Frequently asked questions based on campaigns all over. Questions that are specific to your, how many more square feet are we going to have? Are we going to have another nut grinder? Things like that. Are we going to have more seating in the cafe? If there's anything that's ever bothered you about your co-op, you can be assured somebody will be also bothered by it and might ask you about it. But you'll have a lot of information. And it is totally great if somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, say, I don't know the answer. That's a really good question. I'm going to write it down, and either I or somebody will get back to you. Because when you or somebody does get back to them, even if all you're doing is getting back to them and saying, you know what, that's a great question and nobody knows that yet. That's going to be decided later in the process. Just the fact of you showing you cared enough, you listened to them, you followed up, you valued the conversation enough to follow up with them is hugely powerful and so rare. I mean, how many times if you're on the phone with Verizon or whoever's your phone provider, say, well, in case we get disconnected, how can I go, is this your number? And do they ever call back? Hardly ever. So if you can do that, it's really great. And, again, getting people to ask questions can be super, it shows they're getting connected, they're thinking about it, they're engaged with the co-op, so you want to keep that going. So questions are great. And you're going to have talking points for various aspects of it. Like the frequently asked questions include things like, is the co-op going to be able to pay this money back? Great question, important question. You should be able to field that question. And of course, you're never going to promise because there are risks here. We'll get to that. When you do talk to people, you're going to make sure to follow up. And different campaigns sometimes do this a little differently. In some cases, if you get somebody who says, yeah, I'll take a packet, I'll consider that. Or if they say, yeah, I definitely want a loan, please send me the packet. In some cases, the callers themselves will have a stack of packets already with postage on it, and you just have to, when you verify the address, you handwrite the address on it and maybe take a little post-it note and write, thanks so much, and put it in there. That's really great, very powerful. In other cases, in other campaigns, maybe you put it on your tracking sheet that this person wants it and somebody else handles it. That, I guess, is to be determined still. But you want to make sure that happens fast. If somebody says to you, yes, I think I'd like to take a look at the information, you want to make sure they get that information quickly. It's great to send people a follow-up email. Just a quick, hey, I left a voicemail for you from the co-op about the capital campaign. Here's how you can get more info. You can pre-write them and just put their name in the top. If somebody says, yes, I'm going to make a loan, it is really excellent to send them a brief thank you note. And we'll also have pre-printed things with the co-op logo. Really brief. You don't have to get into anything deep. Just, thanks so much for your loan tonight. Signed, whoever. And if they have questions, again, follow up and get back with them. Super powerful. Every time you dial a number, you want to document that. So even if the number's disconnected, you want to note that. This is not a good number for this person. Or if there's no voicemail. Or if you left a voicemail. Or if you left a third voicemail. Or anything, document everything. And it's not only important for the campaign today, for seeing where we should put our effort and our energy. It's also important for the future, because if you have good, consistent records for the campaign, in the unlikely event that somebody in 10 years comes in and says, I loaned my money to the co-op, I want it back. And if you have chaotic record keeping, and they might not have a promissory note, they just are saying they did it, well, that's going to be a real tough thing if you don't have good record keeping. On the other hand, if you have great record keeping, says, we've got both paper and spreadsheets that show everybody we talked to, exactly when they made their commitment, exactly when we processed their check or their money transfer, and when we mailed them their promissory note. And I'm sorry, sir, but you're not on that list. That will protect you if it comes to that. It's rare, but it's better to be protected and do really good paperwork than not. So document every call, and every time you talk to somebody, every time you actually have a conversation, every time you're going to classify it in one of these 4 ways. And it's pretty straightforward. If somebody says, yes, I'm going to loan, that's a yes. They may say, I don't know how much yet. Write it as, but I'm definitely going to. Write it as a yes with the minimum amount. They may also say, yes, we are definitely loaning, probably in the $5,000 to $10,000 range, but I don't know yet. We got to talk about it. It's great. Put it down at the lowest end of their range, because we're going to calculate these numbers and we're going to look at it, and it's fantastic when somebody says 5 to 10, you write down 5, and they come through at 12. It's not so great if they say 5 to 10 and you write down 10 and they come through at 6. We'd rather be modest in our expectations and have them exceeded. Strong maybes sound a lot like yeses, but they don't actually have that true affirmative in it. They sound like, I think we will, I'm pretty sure we're gonna, but, and then there's usually a but after that. The maybes are not no's. They do not give you a very good warm and fuzzy feeling. They sound more like, well, let me think about it. Yeah, I guess I could look at the information. And in some cases, that's just how the person is, and it may be actually a really strong response. And on the other hand, for some people, they don't have the nerve to say no to you outright. But that's okay. About 50% of strong maybes will eventually loan. About 25% of maybes will eventually loan. And if somebody says to you, no, there's just no way, not going to happen, you could call that a no. But a person who says no when you're like below 30% of your goal in your capital campaign, I don't have great data on how many, but some of those will turn into yeses later in the capital campaign. When if you say we got a $2 million goal and we're 25% of the way there, it is a reasonable reaction for people to go, yeah, whatever. But later, when you can say we have a $2 million goal and we are 80% there, that is a totally different thing for people. Like, whoa, amazing, that is so cool. I want to be a part of this action. So a no is not always a no, but we're going to respect it, and especially as we look at how do we put our time and energy into it, we're going to definitely make sure that we follow up with the yeses and the strong maybes on a regular basis. And we're going to circle back eventually to the regular maybes also, just to make sure.
So how does a no become a yes in that case? If we're not...
Usually they will just do it themselves. They'll come into the store late in the game, and we talked this morning about how there's this curve that's been analyzed of how people accept new ideas, the adoption curve. And there's laggards, and laggards always come in either at the end or beyond the end. 6 months after you're done with the campaign and the store is open in the new space, they'll be like, hey, can I loan now? That's fine. They'll come to you. The no's, if you want, especially if there's a note in it, like sometimes, and this is where your record keeping becomes so important, somebody might say, no, I really can't do this. At least I can't do this now. It's possible in 6 months, I just started a new job and I got to see how it goes. So right down there, they said no, but in 6 months maybe. Well, it might not be 6 months, but we might circle back to that person to say, hey, how are things going? How's the new job? The job's going great. I'm so glad you called. But generally the no's, the few no's that will come back will just come back on their own accord. And that's totally fine. That's totally great. Especially if they feel like they can be the hero that puts you over the top. And it's totally okay if 20, 30 people are walking around Keene saying, I'm the one who put the co-op over the top. Because there's going to be so many people and so much activity, you're not going to know exactly who was the one. So we're not lying or deceiving anyone here at all. So document every call. It's really important. Don't wait till, all right, I'm going to make calls for 3 hours and then do all the paperwork. You're not going to remember who it was who said what at the end of those 3 hours. Every time, if you can, either write it down while you're talking or enter it directly while you're talking. But some folks aren't comfortable with that, and that's totally great. As soon as you hang up, write down anything you need to write down or enter anything you need to enter. Every time. And as I noted, it's not just for now, but it also helps protect the co-op in the future. And no piece of information is too small. Sometimes it's great if somebody says, no, I really can't do it because my cat has been ill and I put a lot of money into vet bills. Give them a call back in a few weeks and just say, hey, how's your cat? It's powerful and wonderful. And especially if you like cats, it's real. If you don't like cats, then wait till somebody says their dog is sick.
Maybe this isn't obvious to everybody else, but do you when you call the number and somebody answers, do you ask for the person who's the member?
I think it's a good thing to do that. You'll have a name on your list, or you might have more than one name.
Right.
So it's great to say, hey, is this Alice or Emily Jones or whatever you have on there, and they might say, yeah, it is, or no, but they're right here, or they're not here, or they don't live here anymore, or whatever. But yeah, so you're going to want to ask if it's the person there. And different co-ops, their co-op ownership lists tend to not be the prettiest things in the world. There's often people who put their kids on their ownership names, or, different co-ops handle it differently. Sometimes they have a primary and others. Somebody's passed away, somebody got divorced, who knows? So you kind of just want to tread respectfully with that. So if you say, hey, is this, Bob or Mary, whoever, and they say, well, Bob doesn't live here anymore, but this is Mary. You say, great, good to talk to you, Mary. Let's talk about the co-op. Just be graceful and respectful to people that way. And you're not going to get, this is like baseball. You're not going to get a hit every time you go up to bat, and that's totally okay. And we started with some visualization. I like to use that sometimes, just generally. So like when I am making calls, I like to think about, I visualize this line of people standing in front of me. And I have to talk to them in order. So the person standing in front of me might be like, yeah, whatever, I don't know. But I can see that somewhere further back in the line, there's somebody who's like waving money in the air, saying, hey, I'm ready, I'm ready. But I have to talk to the others to get to that person. So not every call is going to get you to a loan. That's totally okay. But do stay positive, persevere, keep going, because that person is out there. Every time somebody says, no, I can't do this today, or every voicemail you leave, you are getting that much closer to the next person who's like, oh, I'm so glad you called today, because I have questions, because I want to do this.
So since we're going to get so many no's, do you have a suggestion on how to gracefully close the call after they say no?
Sure. I mean, I think it's always great to just say, yep, okay, well, that's great. Thank you so much for supporting the co-op and being an owner of the co-op. And if you change your mind, we're going to be here. And just leave it at that. Just appreciate the time they gave you on the phone and move on.
I hate it when people tell me no.
I know. It is super hard. But don't take it.
You didn't really mean that, did you?
Well, you can think that, and that's where if you change your mind comes in. Like, you can hang up thinking, they're definitely going to change their mind. Although don't write that down there. If they say no, write down no. But whatever, yeah. And so, occasionally somebody, it's very rare, but once in a blue moon I hear that somebody was mean on the phone to a caller. And again, I can tell this is a bad time, click, hang up, move on. We don't know what's going on the other end of the phone.
So,
Yeah.
is there a form that you've developed for documentation, like
Yes.
that?
Yeah,
will be-
and we talked about that some this morning. A tracking sheet that you can enter the information in, including a notes field. So if they, loves peanut butter, sick dog, whatever, you can put that in there. Or has this question. So yeah.
Nut grinder guy, right?
Yeah.
What's that?
The nut grinder guy.
Yes, the nut grinder. That was my mother-in-law, that was her big question. Are we going to have a peanut grinder? Because once she went into a store that she thinks might have been a co-op, but she didn't know, that had a peanut grinder, and she thought that was the greatest thing, and she's always wanted to have fresh ground peanut butter ever since. And would we have one? And I had no idea, so I went to the general manager who had just been hired, and we had no store, nothing had been ordered, to say, of course we're going to have a peanut grinder. What kind of a store do you think we're going to be? I hope you have a peanut grinder in your store. Sorry. I mean,
But are we going to have another one?
we're in Virginia. We grow peanuts there. We sort of have to do it. So definitely tap into, whatever got you to serve on the board in the first place or be a part of your co-op, tap into that. It's great to go back to, to be thinking about, I'm into this because co-ops have played a big role in my life in a variety of ways, and I'm gonna tap into that energy. Let that passion show. Also, you can definitely talk about that this project has been a very long in planning project. It is being constantly reassessed for feasibility. We're using industry experts. We're comparing our data, our information to other co-ops around the country of similar size and situations so that we can make the best possible decisions. So we have really done a lot of work to make this the best project it can be. Of course, there are risks, but yet we believe this is a good thing to move forward with. So talking about all that work that has gone into it is really great. Talking about the loan campaign in progress and the other, you're not necessarily going to say, I just talked to Mr. Jones who just did a $50,000, but you could say, I've been having a great evening talking to people on the phone and getting lots of loans. Because this is a strange thing for a lot of people, to be called and say, do you want to invest in your grocery store? So by being able to say other people are doing this, this is a reasonable thing to do, it's normal, that really helps people feel more confident or more willing to say, yeah, okay, I'll consider doing that. And yeah, have fun with it. I have already had $25,000 in new loans, but I sure would like to get to $50,000 tonight. Can you help me get there? Have fun with it, but talk about that. And as I said, appreciate folks, thank them for their time, thank them for being owners of the co-op, thank them for considering it, thank them for taking a packet if they take a packet, and ask them directly for the loan. Ask them. It's okay to do, and in fact, it's more than okay, it's essential. And one thing you want to make sure not to do is do not make promises. And I have heard this firsthand. I'm not supposed to say this to you, but between you and me and the lamppost, this thing is a slam dunk. No, no, no. We do not have a crystal ball. We don't know what the future will hold. Yes, this has been, we have assessed feasibility in a range of ways, and we feel that this is a good move for the co-op, but we cannot guarantee, so don't tell anyone that. Even if you might feel really strongly that this is absolutely going to be great, the project will be great, but we cannot guarantee its success. So be careful about that. Not arguing and being defensive, there are different definitions for that. A Brooklyn, New York caller for a capital campaign may feel like what is and isn't arguing or defensiveness is very different from what a Wilmer, Minnesota caller might have. I don't know where Keene, New Hampshire falls in that. I don't think anyone needs to get into a situation where you're arguing or getting put on the defensive. You can always move on to the next call. And I don't think it tends to be very effective. Although again, you very well may have folks you're calling who this may be their second home, they live in Manhattan, arguing maybe just how they talk. Who knows? Make sure you take good notes, and don't get run down if you are getting a lot of no's in a row. It is worth, if you are getting a lot of no's in a row, maybe taking a step back and thinking, how am I feeling today? Am I like down about anything? Am I projecting that? Or maybe should I go listen to somebody who's doing this really well and just hear how they're talking about it, get some pointers. Do I want to practice? Maybe call a friend and say, hey, can we do this? Can we role play a little bit? So try to analyze it and see what you might be able to do to change that. But again, it happens. You might be doing really great, and then you just have a run of 10 people in a row who are saying no to you. It happens. Don't take it personally, but keep moving forward. Because the money is there. The big checks are awesome. That was for the Bismarck, North Dakota co-op, $50,000 from their local electric co-op that they loaned to their co-op to get it started. Yes, worth talking to your rural electric co-ops. They're co-ops, and they have lots of money, generally. But it's just so awesome when you do get those big checks, and the money is definitely there. I can really assure you that if your co-op has grown to this point, it's serving people's needs, it's serving a real wonderful need in the community, and most communities have a lot more money than you might be able to see on the surface of it. I mean, I know you have banks and credit unions here, and there's something in each one of those banks. And you can look at it in a million different ways, but rest assured the money is there. It's just a matter of connecting with people, making them feel confident about the co-op, and then asking them directly. So who wants to practice with me? You can pretend you're calling, or I can call you and try to sell you on it. Whether you want to do it now or not, you're going to need to practice this. Practice is really important. You can practice with each other first. Maybe call a close friend or a spouse or a relative and say, hey, I want to practice this. Can we do this? Great. And go through the process and ask them. And of course, you will have supporting materials, but still, just getting comfortable. Practice helps. It makes you get more comfortable, more fluid with it, and it gets you better at making these calls. And it's great to be that much better from the very first call. You'll get there as you make a lot of calls.
I'll try.
Yay!
Okay.
But if you say no, I might just run out of the room.
Okay, I'll see if I can work that into it. All right, so you're going to call me. Great.
I'm going to call you.
Ring,
Okay.
ring, ring.
Hello.
Hi, can I talk to Ben?
Yeah, this is Ben.
Hey Ben, how you doing?
Good.
My name's Carolyn Crane, and I'm calling from the Monadnock Food Co-op, and
Okay.
I know you're an owner, as I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm calling to make sure that you know about our member loan campaign, our owner member
Wait, your what?
loan campaign. We have a loan campaign going,
Okay.
so that we can build an addition onto our store. So do you
the
know
store's
anything
going to
about
get
the addition?
bigger?
It's going to get bigger.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
That's
it
cool.
needs to get bigger. We can serve our owners better with a bigger store. We can have more local products. I don't know what's important to you. What motivated you to get?
Well,
to
I
become
really love coming in to get a particular loaf of bread that we love, and also I've got a kid who has some dietary needs that the co-op helps.
That's great that we're being able to help your family like that. So let me tell you about the loan campaign.
Mm-hmm.
This is a loan that will help fund the expansion, and we're asking owner members to give us loans anywhere between.
Well, what's your minimum? 'Cause I don't have a lot of time. What's the minimum? I can
Well, you know, we're looking for almost $1 million altogether. So you know that we're
That's a lot
going
of
to need
money.
a lot of loans.
Mm-hmm.
So the minimum is $2,000, but we're looking for loans up with $10,000 or $20,000 from people that are able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a packet of information if you want to know more about the campaign. I can send you this so you can get informed about it. Unless you're ready to loan some money right now, that would be great.
Well, let me see the packet. I think we'll probably do something, but yeah, please send me out the packet.
All right, so let me confirm your address because I got to mail this to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have you on Elm Street, at number 5 Elm Street.
Yep, that's
okay.
right. Mm-hmm.
And And so I'll get that right out to you, and I'll give you a call back in a couple of days after you've had a chance to look at it.
That sounds okay.
All right.
Yep.
Great. And if you have any questions, you have my number. Just give me a call back.
Right, or come in the store.
Okay. What?
Or come in the store.
Or come in the store.
Yeah. No, that's great. You just did a fantastic job with that. Yes, and it's.
What did I miss? Did I miss any?
You really, well,
points?
one thing that we didn't even talk about is because everyone is going to get a letter, and the letter is going to have actually 3 components. It's going to have a printed appeal letter saying this is happening, please make your loan. It's going to have a brochure, pretty straightforward trifold, and it's going to have some testimonials. Some, I'm loaning to the co-op because statements from other owners. So that is one kind of easy way to start the conversation. Hey, have you gotten a chance to read that appeal letter we sent to you? And as we noted earlier, people will lie, and that's okay. They'll say, yeah, oh yeah, sure, that appeal letter. It's totally unopened and sitting there under a pile of mail. Gives you the chance to say, you know, if it sounds like they have it, even if they say yes, no problem, I can bottom line it for you. Or if they say, no, I haven't seen it yet, I can tell you what's on it in a couple seconds. Here's what it's about. So it's a great opening salvo for you, a first thing to talk about. But yeah, you did great. I think if you practice our minimum is only 2,000. Yes, but with practice it gets a lot easier. And
so it's okay to tell. You gotta answer.
Yeah,
the
you
question.
can totally tell them the minimum, but you want to make sure you follow that up with. But in order for us to meet our $2 million goal, we're going to need a lot of owners to be loaning $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 or even more, and it would be great. Do you think you could loan that much? Could you loan $20,000 or more to the co-op? But yeah, no, that was really great. And the one other thing you said, is it okay if I call you in a week or so, which is totally great, but it doesn't matter what they say, you're going to call them in a week or so. Because people will say, no, don't worry, I'll call you. You need to follow up with them. Anybody who takes a packet, you need to follow up with them because they may have good intentions, or they may be saying that because then you'll get off their back, but it doesn't matter. If they take a packet, we're going to call them again. But it's certainly nice to ask and to say, is a week good? They might say, actually, I'm out of town next week. No problem, make a note of that. So that's just fine. Just don't let it put you off if they say, oh no, don't worry, I'll call you. Sure you will.
For situations like that, is it going to happen often where a member owner could call back the person that talked to them?
Very rarely. More likely, they're going to come in the store and they'll go up to the service counter and say, hey, I got a message, or I'm interested in finding out more about. That is much more likely. I mean, it's possible somebody might call back, but most of the time, no. And that can lead to sometimes feeling like, is what I'm doing really making any difference? Because you don't get any callbacks. But don't worry, rest assured, the calls are really quite powerful, even if they're just voicemails, or even if you're just hanging up and they see the number show up again.
Oh, that's what you meant when you leave a voicemail. So on your voicemail script slide, how do we do that? We say, I guess you're not available right now, I'll try back.
Yeah, or we will have information for you. So it's perfectly okay to say, on the voicemail say, and although you can call me back, actually it's best if you could, call Jen at the store at this number, or stop it, something like that.
Yeah, I think that would be good if we had that loop, because if I get calls numbers I don't know,
Right. Yeah, and people are less likely to call a stranger back than to go to call the store back, or to see somebody in the store.
I don't know. I don't know that there are any strangers in Keene. I think.
Well, that's a good sign.
It's just people we haven't met, Glenn.
Exactly right. Yeah. And nothing turns people into friends better than talking about money.
I don't know about that.
But it's a great process. Co-ops raise millions and millions of dollars this way. I just actually got an email today. The co-op Common Market in Frederick, Maryland just passed the 75% mark. So they're just cruising. They're at 700. Their goal right now is $1 million, and they're no problem. They're going to blow that out of the water. Fredericksburg Food Co-op, which is a startup, does not have a store yet. They're at about 1.2 million, on their way to 1.6. Springfield's going to get going fairly soon. Springfield, Vermont. There's capital campaigns going on in Chicago, Illinois. It happens all over. Co-ops do this anytime they grow or expand or start from scratch. They're doing a capital campaign. It's just how we do it. It's how we have to do it, but it's also a great thing to do. So, and again, you can talk to people about that we are not a weird, unusual thing. We are just a co-op that is serving its community, and we're growing, and all co-ops, as they grow, do capital campaigns. So we are right there with the rest of them. Other thoughts or questions?
The package, what's the wisdom on sending that electronically versus a paper version?
I like paper a lot. And so, and that also, if you are going to consider an electronic option, you may want to check with your lawyer, because some lawyers actually feel it's important. You know, this is a very important legal document that it needs to be sent in paper, so that you can note, we sent a hard copy of this on this date. Whether, you know, I think in the future that'll be less of an issue, but I like sending paper because it is just super easy for me to press that button and hit delete for anything. Doesn't matter how big it is. But if you send me a big, heavy envelope full of paper, I am going to definitely feel a little guilty if I just put that in the recycle pile without looking at it.
And if it's something they need to sign, and
there are things they need to sign and get back to you, and I definitely...
And that's hard for people.
Yeah.
Sometimes who maybe don't have a computer.
Yes,
or
and
they don't have a computer, they have a phone.
I do see that co-ops that still use paper and are willing to send paper out and ask for people to send paper back, they tend to do a little better in these campaigns. The electronic ones, you just have to keep hounding people, because again, it's just so easy to ignore anything that comes electronic.
And I think we have an older, I mean, we do tend to have older customer demographic too, so.
What are you saying?
Nothing.
We're not the most facile with our computers.
Is that it? Okay.
And you know, if they are concerned about how much paper you're using, well, you can always use it to get your wood stove going in the winter.
There you go.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of sending out paper. People do feel a certain obligation, and it's real when they see this thing, you know, sitting there in their mailbox. It's a thing, and it's okay for people to have that sense of obligation, or at least I should think about this, because they've gone to that much trouble to print this, to mail it to me, to pay for the postage. I should at least take a look at it.
But it does seem like it's worthwhile having a real build-up through electronic means.
Yes.
Letting people know that
we're gonna absolutely,
we will be sending.
Yes, we're going to absolutely support this extensively electronically in social media, in emails to people, on the co-op's website. You'll send out press releases to local press. So yes, there will be a lot of electronic support, but ultimately, yeah. And that's also why we don't just send the memorandum or the prospectus to everyone. We do send the appeal letter to everyone. That's a less expensive thing to send, but we do ask for people to either request or approve us sending them the big packet. And again, that is one step closer. It's not a yes, but it is a step in the right direction, and that's what we want to do.
Are we going to have a beat that's going to get filled in?
Yes.
Well, that's something. I'm not sure.
Something, we don't know what yet, but.
Yeah. You will, and you'll have that on social media. You'll have it in the store. We went through the store earlier with just looking at ideas of where it could be promoted without getting in the way of selling of your normal business, but it should be all over the store. You know, I really want to stress that idea that it should be inescapable, and even if you feel like it's inescapable, and we do, those of us who are in our co-ops the most and notice our co-ops the most, and you tend to care deeply about them, we may be like, oh man, we are hitting people over the head with this, and we're spamming them, and we're this, and we're that. Don't worry about it. Most people, electronically, people, yeah, they totally tune it out. They might notice 1 out of every 5, 6, or 7 communications. Yeah. So if we're not communicating all the time, they might be seeing something once a month. And people can walk through an entire, how many times have you or maybe I shouldn't put this on anyone else. How many times have I gone to a friend person at my own co-op and said, hey, where is this item that's on special? I couldn't find it. And they're like,
that big stack right there.
It's right there, yeah. It's the end cap right here. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, thanks. It's just human nature. So there's going to be things all over the store that, with good humor, say, this is happening, take part. Lots of ways to support you in that, so that hopefully when you do get a hold of people, or when you run into them on the street or in the co-op, they're like, oh yeah, I saw something about that. Like, yes, you did.
What would be a good average loan total for us?
In terms of the average amount?
Yeah.
So, especially depending on what you settle on as the ultimate need from the owners, if we're doing $2 million, it would be great to be able to get to 10,000, because that puts you right at 200 loans. But you still have some wiggle room if you're below that to stay under 300. But yeah, I think 10,000 is really reasonable, and really where the co-ops that achieve the higher averages, yes, they're doing a good job getting kind of the rank and file lender, the rank and file owner, to make bigger than minimum loans, but usually where they get to those really nice healthy ones is they're doing a great job with large lenders. They're getting some 50s, some 100s, some 200s in there, and those are out there. It can be strange to imagine that's happening, because it might just seem like the weirdest thing ever for somebody to come up with $100,000 for their co-op, and yet, like I said, just happened last week in Frederick, Maryland. Fredericksburg, Virginia has been getting 50s pretty regularly, probably gotten 5.
Do they also have the restriction of they have to be member owners?
Yes. Yep.
So they were already...
Pretty much all co-ops have that. That's how we can offer these without having to register them with the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission.
I have to sneak out. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Looking forward to being a part of it.
Excellent.
Appreciate it.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
But yeah, pretty much all co-ops have to be within their state and have to be owners of the co-op. We did talk earlier, and there may be some exploration. There are a few other vehicles like the direct public offering, the DPO, which is usually restricted to within the state but can go to the public within the state. But that's a little different thing, and don't worry about it for now. And some states, like your neighbor over in Vermont, have additional restrictions that make it harder, but co-ops still do it. So, I don't think New Hampshire has quite as many restrictions as Vermont does on this. You can do this. You can raise a lot of money. You can keep that money local. You can make local people more prosperous, and you can grow your co-op this way. You can totally do this.
Well, I do feel like it's doable. I'm noting that we started thinking about $1 million. We moved to $1.2 million. And now we're looking at...
I've been saying 2 just because it's a nice number, but that is not based on any information that I've gotten. Yeah. So it could be 1.5. Who knows? We don't know yet. But the trend has been...
Given your math, if we have 10,000 as the average, then it's 200 loans to reach 2 million. Why shouldn't that be doable?
Totally.
Simple math.
Totally.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it is a way, if you just say $2 million to somebody, they're like, whoa, that's ridiculous. Actually, it's only $210,000 loans. Not so bad. You know, are there $210,000 cars in your community? Absolutely. In fact, that many go through your parking lot probably in a day or two. So, you know, and I like looking at it that way. Again, I worked in other industries, so like I did a calculation, a back of the napkin type calculation for my community, Harrisonburg, Virginia, about 50,000 people, not a great median income, but I looked at the number of bike shops in the area and I thought about, all right, how many bikes do I think are sold every year that are over $1,000? And not that that's, I mean, you can go a lot over that, but you know, no one has to buy a bike that's $1,000 or more. There are certainly less expensive bikes, and yet in that community, I calculated that there were, I forget how many hundreds of bikes that were sold every year over $1,000. Well, that's disposable income right there, and that's just one sport that doesn't take into account golf or tennis or anything else people do. So it's just a matter of us getting people to think about the co-op as where some of that money should go.
Yeah, we didn't really talk that much about the difference that we're not fundraising for a nonprofit where it's an actual donation,
right?
But this is an investment.
Yes, you'll get a return on it and you'll get this money back someday if all goes well.
And it's local. How often do people have an opportunity to invest in something local, except if in their own business? Maybe?
Yes, super local. Yeah, yeah, and super efficient. You know, if somebody wants to loan $50,000, that money is going straight into materials and inventory and shelves and everything else that builds the new part of the store. With almost none of it, you know, again, you're not paying for an investment house that has an office in Boston and Atlanta and San Francisco.
Or bringing it down to the food business. I don't know anybody, was anybody at the food store, the co-op store you got in?
Oh, the grocery store?
The grocery store. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You talked about how the grocery stores are owned by, what was it, 5 companies?
Mm-hmm.
5 huge international corporations. And that's not us. It's your money and it's your store.
Yeah. What are the other What are the chains that are in this region?
Price Chopper.
Okay.
Price Chopper.
Market
But even
Basket.
Hannaford's now owned by what? Does anybody remember? Some
French.
German company. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and
I
most
thought it was Maine.
most companies have found that owning multiple brands is more effective than just having the same name all over the country. So, you know, if you have a regional brand that's strong in this part of New England, they'll just buy that and keep using the name because that's better than changing it to their name. Even if it's, you know, Martin, where I live, Martin's and Giant are the exact same company and they're all part of Royal or Ahold Delhaize, which is a Dutch company, but we have Martin's and Giant in the same, you know, community because some people are like, oh, I hate Martin's, but I like Giant.
In terms of sharing statistics for like amounts loaned, you said that not to share. Like I just got off the phone with someone who said we gave 50,000.
I think you can say that. You don't want to necessarily say, I just got off the phone with Steve Roberts,
exactly.
who did, yes. If, you know, there may be some people, and if you looked at the social media feed for Fredericksburg, you're seeing they're doing an amazing job of taking pictures of everybody signing paperwork and putting out there, but they're using terms like made a meaningful loan or a significant loan. I think they're doing that for everybody, but they're not saying so that somebody is looking at a person's face and saying they made a $100,000 loan. So they're not tying it that directly. They're just saying the loan. But I think you can definitely say, I have talked to a bunch of people tonight and I have already gotten, you know, X number of $1,000s in new loans. Or I just got off the phone with somebody who did a great loan. Like talking about your experience and the success is great, just not necessarily with specific names.
Sure.
I think you mentioned it. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think you mentioned it this morning, but I can't remember if you said it to this group. But just that having your own goal for the evening is a real effective way to keep you motivated. But also be like, you know, I already have 10,000. I'm looking to get 20,000 by, you know, the end of the night. Woohoo!
Yeah,
So
totally.
you look successful too, and
Yeah,
feel successful.
and people like that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of it is psychologically, I mean, I think all of us have experienced some version of that, usually when buying a high-ticket item like a car or something else, where it's like, you know, I know I could do this, I know it's the right thing to do it, but I don't know. But if you have some little help, like, oh, you know, all right, you need to hit your number for the night and I can help you with that? Okay, all right, I'll do it. You know, it's a little thing, but it helps. And this is like a battle that's won in little tiny increments, that you keep moving people forward. You get.
Wait, I thought there were $10,000 increments.
Yes, well, but to get people to say yes, you're moving them from, I have no idea that this is even happening, to, oh, the co-op's growing, to, oh, we're the community funds co-ops, to, oh, I could loan money to, you know, like, those are all steps along the path to eventually saying, sure, I'll write you a big fat check. But we need to bring folks along and do that in a variety of ways.
How does that jive with the 6-week or month-long period that we're running a campaign?
So yeah, in terms of like how...
Getting those steps all...
Yes. So we talked earlier about that, you know, the adoption curve. You've got a few folks who are going to come right at the beginning, the low-hanging fruit. They're awesome and wonderful and we love them, but there's not enough of them in the world. But that's fine. And then for others, we're going to point to those folks, say we've already gotten this much progress, that's exciting. But that's where calling a number of times, and then so they get the voicemail, oh, something's happening, and they, you know, see something in the store, and they notice the indicator, and they get an email, and maybe they come to their local watering hole when you're having an event there, the information evening or something, and those are all the kind of steps. But definitely there is, you know, from the time mapping perspective, you get a nice burst right off the bat, which makes you think this is going to be easy peasy, and then it dries up, and you got to start working super hard, but things are still coming in, and then you get a little bigger one that's a match, and then that makes things kind of jump a little bit, and then that helps get things rolling. And often, when you get above 50%, there is a little, you know, there's sort of a tipping point around 50, 55%, where at that point people start being a little more aware and receptive to the concept. And definitely when you're like above 80, 85, 90%, you know, you still have to do the work, you still have to ask them, but then people are like, oh, am I going to miss out? Like, yeah, you might, you better do this right now. You know, then it gets a little easier again. And again, at 99%, you'll have 20 people who want to be the ones to do the final loan. It's fine. Just take it.
So I know we've identified low-hanging fruit, but would we be conceivably calling all owners for this process, all 3?
You know, it's conceivable, but most groups don't, mostly because of how many people that is. And but we look at how things are going, and if you've called the first highest likelihood 1,000 owners, say, if you've actually gotten through and talked to a really good number of those folks, we're going to keep going. But most groups don't actually end up calling everybody, or they may dial them and leave a voicemail, but never, I mean, certainly you're not going to get a hold of everybody.
Sure.
But we're going to try to reach as many as we can, and we're going to work with what we can do.
Because it'll also be, it's also out there as a thing that people can come to, you know, can also seek out.
Absolutely. And they will come in the store, sometimes because they talked to somebody, sometimes because they saw the social media or the email or the appeal letter. They will come in the store and ask, definitely.
I forgot those statistics you had at the beginning. If we're looking for, let's say, 250 good-sized loans.
Well, 250 at an average of 10,000 is
Right.
$2.5 million. So.
Right. Okay. So.
But it was like 1 in 4.
So let's say 200. How many calls? How many different individuals do we have to call?
So
What is that proportion?
for 200 loans, you have made you've had about 800 conversations with people. That might be on the phone, it might be in the store, but you've actually had about 800 conversations for 200 loans. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a lot. But that's why we have multiple people doing it, and we persevere, and we keep trying. And I mean, yes, it certainly feels like a lot when you're at 0% of your goal and you haven't started yet. It feels better once you start getting along the way. And certainly groups do build their own confidence as they begin to see some successes. And it is, we also talked this morning about, well, maybe we talked during this too, that there are people who really want to do good things with their money, and they have very few opportunities to do good things with their money. And this is a fantastic thing. It passes the 3 a.m. test. If you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling wondering, is my money doing good or bad in the world, you can feel pretty darn good about what your money is doing in your local food co-op.
I was just thinking about the use of the word appeal in the appeal letter. Mm-hmm. Is there another way to
We call it that. The letter never says appeal on it.
Oh, okay. All right.
We call it that because that's the term for it.
Okay.
It's an appeal letter. But the letters are usually pretty specific. We outline some of the big wins of our co-op. Hey, we're only open this many years, but we're really successful, and we're growing, and we're this and we're that. And we often include the reason for growth, but in order for us to continue to grow, or in order for us to serve more of our community, we need to get bigger. Here's how we're going to do it. So we're writing to ask you to please loan.
Now's your chance.
Right, and we will, like when we talked this morning about identifying maybe 1,000 to 1,500 sort of the key folks, the ones who spend the most, who shop the most, and who have joined the most recently. We will send them a letter that says, we're going to be calling you soon. And then we might send everybody else, this is what some co-ops do, all the rest of the ownership is just going to get a letter that doesn't say we are going to call you, because we're acknowledging we might not get to them. We might still call them, but we're not promising it. Mm-hmm. So that's one way to kind of handle that.
I mean, if you have a team of 10 people who are going to make the calls, that's only 80 calls per person.
Right. Only. And it is, some people get really into it and have a great time with it. Some co-ops will do calling parties where you'll have a space like this, or, use different parts of it, especially after hours. It's probably, I'm imagining in the evenings it might be pretty quiet here. So you come together, you have snacks and beverages, and you start calling, and every time somebody gets a loan, they ring a bell, or they just say, hey everybody, I got another loan. And it's really fun and supportive. And again, if you feel underconfident or you're struggling, you can go sit next to somebody who's really having a good time with it and listen to them. Or you can practice with people. So I think calling parties can be really great. If you're able to do it on your own at home and you're motivated and you actually do the calls, that's fine too. Go for it. But sometimes people really like and get a lot of work done at group calling events like that.
Cool.
Go forth and grow. Thank you so much for your time here and for the effort you're going to be putting into this and already have put into it. Thanks a lot. Your co-op really matters. You're making the world better here. So.